Go ahead. Perfect. Well, I'm very happy to welcome everyone to our roundtable called Reading is Fundamental, how to teach and encourage reading in a Russian language classroom. We have a jam-packed roundtable because we have 6 presenters, and that's exciting. It means that reading is a big topic that people are really interested in exploring. And it's great that there are so many different people with so many different perspectives on reading and that can offer different techniques for how we can make reading fun and how we can make reading resonate with our students. And we also have presenters today that come from different that teach in different educational settings. We have people that teach in higher ed. We have people that teach in K-12. We have people that teach in like co-curricular, extracurricular settings. I mean, probably there are even more settings that I'm not mentioning right now, but it's amazing that we have such a variety of people, perspectives, contexts, and I'm sure that our roundtable is going to go really well. Because we have 6 presenters in our roundtable, each presentation is going to be limited to 10 minutes only. I mean, you can talk for like 11, 12 minutes, right? We'll give you an extra minute or two, but we will leave all the questions at the very end. So we'll make sure that everyone goes first. People that are joining us, thank you so much for joining our roundtable. Save the questions until the very end, and we will have a productive discussion all together. So I will start us off, and I'll just kind of like situate our roundtable rather informally. But then we are going to learn about different techniques that our esteemed presenters have used in their teaching settings. And we are going to then move on to Lara Ravitch from the University of Oregon. Then we'll have Irina Feofanova from Enlightium Academy. And then we'll have Nat Leach from the French School of Baltimore. After that, we will move to Anna Karpusheva from the University of Pittsburgh, and then we'll finish with Serafima Gettys from Lewis University. So we also have people from all over the place. So we have like the United States represented from like different parts of the country, which is amazing. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to honor the 10-minute commitment myself, so I don't speak over anyone. I'm going to share my screen now. Um, hopefully you hopefully you can see the slides. Let me make sure I do the slideshow first. Okay. Yeah, perfect. I think you should be able to see the slides, right? So here you have the names of everyone who is on this roundtable, affiliations, and the emails. And I'm also going to use, I have a similar slide at the very end for people to take a screenshot of if they want to like reach out to you and ask you questions or collaborate or come up with something together. So I'm very excited to start this roundtable, but first I want to start with something that I committed to doing at this conference, because this is all very like, it just happened. I'm from Florida State University, and unfortunately we experienced a tragedy last week. We had a mass shooting on campus, and I know that this is this conference is a celebration, but it's a celebration of education, and educational settings should not be places where students feel unsafe. Unfortunately, 2 members of our community were shot and died. There were other people shot too, and they were injured. They are recovering, but I think it's very important for us to have these conversations as educators, because unfortunately, these tragedies happen across different educational settings, and it's very important to honor the victims, the people that have fallen victim to tragedies like this. And I just want to take a moment to honor my community, my Knoll community here at Florida State University, because we went through a very terrible tragedy, and I hope that no one ever goes through that, because it really is horrible. So moving on from that, which is difficult, but kind of focusing on reading because we're here to celebrate education. This roundtable, the idea to do this roundtable came from one of the sessions that ACTR was organizing. And it was a comment, I think, by Olga Klimova, who said that, well, students are not reading now at all, right? So like, how do we even encourage to read them in their first language, and what, let alone their second language? And reading it really is a contested topic, especially these days when students have so many multimedia things around them, right? They spend tend to stay on their phones. There's the videos they watch on TikToks or Reels, Instagram, right? Like they all kind of limit the attention span that the people have, right? Because they're all very short. And it's very interesting how people approach reading and what reading is. So there are different pieces in different, magazines and that are available online, like The Atlantic or like Education Next, where people talk about all these different issues. And there's an article which is really famous now about the elite college students who can't read books anymore. And it does talk about how people don't read novels anymore. There are also things in these articles that are kind of missing, that don't recognize the things that students read and what texts can be. They don't necessarily have to be long volumes of different like literary works, but people talk about how students may not be as motivated to read anymore. And I think that's where like the power of second language education, of second language learning comes in, because we may really have an opportunity to open up students to this, new worlds for new words. There's a great book by Bell Hooks, which is called Teaching to Transgress. It's not a book on how to teach people to read in the second language. However, it is a book that has a lot of different essays on how to approach multiculturalism and multilingualism. And Bell Hooks talks about something that's specifically called engaged pedagogy, so which I think could be very relevant to the things that our dear presenters will be sharing today. And when we talk about language, she has an essay in this book called Language Teaching New Worlds and New Words. And it's not necessarily about teaching reading, but it's about how we should open up our minds for the power of the word, for the power of the language, and how by teaching to read critically, or just to read, teaching to read at all, if we need to extend this message, can really help our students connect different dots and become these full informed people, and how they can take this experience from their second language learning into their first language learning and have like this, transactional, how they can have this interaction between them too. And there are a lot of great books that have been written on how to teach reading, how to approach reading, from like a task-based perspective. Communicative Language Teaching in Action is a great book, but then there's a lot of great volumes on how to approach reading and why we should pay attention to teaching reading in the second language classroom, because we may assume that students that come into our classroom already know how to read in their first language, but sometimes that's actually not true. They don't actually, I mean, they may read, but they don't really know the strategies that they can capitalize on to read, right? They may just like read a page, but they may not get anything out of it. So sometimes it's the second language classroom that actually equips students with those strategies. And there's also volumes on how to teach reading across different languages and writing systems. And there's a chapter on how to learn to read in Russian. So I encourage people to check it out. It's a great book. And then there's also other Slavic languages represented in this volume. But essentially, when we talk about teaching reading, one important idea that we should all take away is that when reading instruction facilitates this transition from learning to read to reading to learn, and there will be a lot of techniques shared today that I think help to facilitate this transition, that we first learn to read, but then we hopefully have the skill so we can continue our learning. And if we talk about the important considerations for teaching second language reading, those that have to do with comprehending and processing written information, it's very important to talk about a lot of different factors that are like person and student centered, that are text centered, right? We always have to remember that when students approach reading, they rely not only on their cognitive ability to kind of like parse syntax, or like their linguistic knowledge of like discourse markers that are present in the text, but also we have to remember that students bring their background to the reading, and they can interpret things differently depending on where they come from, depending what their first language is, depending on how much they read, right? So all these things come into play when we talk about teaching reading. But then also we have to talk about how students can monitor their progress, right? So today people will be talking about things like extensive reading, and also talk about techniques that fall under intensive reading, which focuses on specific parts of the language. So how do students how can they keep track of the progress that they're making? And how can we make sure that they maybe keep journals where they write their impressions, or maybe how they can do different activities that can show that the reading is really enriching their lives. And we also have to talk about the material that they give our students, like the readability of the texts that are available. Do we use modified readers, or do we use the original text? And if we use the original text, the idea is that we always modify the task, not the text, right? So that's one of the ideas that people share. So maybe sometimes it is important to use the materials that were written as some people say, quote unquote, native speakers, right? And just adapt them to their learners so they can get the most out of it. And these are all important considerations to consider. And one important thing that I've always kind of see is important when it comes to doing anything with language learning or any learning at all is to give students a purpose for reading. So like why are they reading this text? Like what's the point in reading this, like maybe like essay that you give them? What are they supposed to get out of it? What are the instructions for them for reading it? And how is it scaffolded? So just giving someone to read something may not necessarily first make them want to read it, but also encourage that love for reading that can take them to so many different places. So that was my very informal brief introduction because I was like, we only have 10 minutes, so what am I going to talk about? So that was very informal because there's so much to be said about reading. And it was less than 10 minutes, which is good. It means that there's more time for our presenters. And we're going to hear from 5 more people, and they're actually going to talk about more specific techniques that they've used with different kinds of students in their classrooms. And again, these are the roundtable participants. I encourage you all to take a screenshot, or write down the names and write down the emails because the power of collaboration is very important. And if you feel like you want to try out something in your classroom that you found exciting in one of the presentations today, I think you can reach out to the person directly and ask them for guidance and help, or maybe work on something together. Um, yeah, and thank you so much for the comments in the chat. I really appreciate that. Well, on this note, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm gonna hand it over to Lara because Lara is the person that is going next. So while Lara is setting up the slides, I'm going to introduce Lara. Lara Ravitch is the coordinator of the Russian language program at the University of Oregon. She has also served as Dean of Concordia Language Village's Summer Russian Language Immersion Program for 20 years. Her academic background is in both language pedagogy and special education, and she has a strong interest in supporting students with learning challenges in language classes. So welcome to Lara, and Lara, the floor is yours.
There we go. Thank you so much, Emil. As Emil mentioned, my background is in both special education and language pedagogy. And so I'm bringing a lot today to the reading table, as it were, from first language reading. But the strategies that I'll be talking about today have also all been validated with second language reading for alphabetic languages. The other thing to know about what I'm bringing today is that I'm really taking this reading as fundamental part seriously. I want to talk about things that are fun to do in the language classroom, in part because for students for whom reading is a challenge, having that fun is really necessary to keep them engaged and enthusiastic about learning Russian, which I know is a goal that we all have. So first I want to talk about the 5 keys to reading instruction and talk about why I've chosen to focus on fluency, reading fluency as a focus. The National Reading Panel studied aspects of reading instruction that are most effective and found that they included phonemic awareness, so knowing what sounds exist, phonics, the sound letter correspondence, fluency, which is reading rate, among other things, vocabulary, word knowledge, and comprehension, understanding of the overall ideas in the text. We generally do a pretty good job of covering phonemic awareness, right? Look, there's new sounds in Russian that you didn't have in English. Let's practice them, right? And most of our students come to us with phonemic awareness from their first language. So we just need to introduce a little bit. And unless the student has a specific disability related to this, that's usually enough. Same thing with phonics. Our students typically, unless we're dealing with very young children, already have decoding skills in their first language. They need to learn our alphabet, but they can basically apply those skills and then move on. Vocabulary is something we do really well as language teachers in general. That we have been teaching vocabulary and what it means, and we see that as a major component of our work. Same with comprehension. That's something that we generally as a field understand really well about how to teach, right? Fluency, though, is often something that we think maybe will just happen if they keep reading more. And to a certain extent, that's true. But how do you make them read more? And what is it, what that is the more that they should be reading? So let's look at this. Reading fluency is about reading speed, but it's reading speed with accuracy. It's about being able to decode words with automaticity, and it's about being able to read with prosody so that you're grouping words together according to thought group so that it makes sense. It's important because when students read slowly, it impacts their working memory. They forget the first half of the sentence by the time they get to the second half. Prosody also can assist in comprehension. When you're grouping the right words together, you're understanding how the ideas among them relate. Um, and I haven't found statistics on this in Russian, although I haven't looked too hard. I'd be interested if anyone knows. But in English, native speakers read 230 words per minute by eighth grade, typically, which is necessary in order to do that reading to learn that Emil was talking about. So if we want students to be able to read and understand novel content in Russian, they have to have a reading speed that's pretty high. So this is all very important to teach them. So how can we do that? Well, one of the things that has been shown to improve reading fluency is repeated reading, reading the same text multiple times. And I think later in our roundtable, we have someone who'll be talking about the rationale behind that in greater detail. But one of the problems is that students do not like to read the same text 4 million times, right? It's good for them, but like broccoli, they're not always interested. So we need to trick them into having some fun while they're doing this repeated reading. And readers' theater can be a great strategy to get students reading the same text again and again because it's going to culminate in a performance. It has a reason that they want to be reading really well. So you can start with the teacher modeling the text and then divide the students into parts and then perform. And what's really important to understand about readers' theater is the reader's part. Lots of us do dialogues and that sort of thing where the students get up on stage and perform. The important thing with readers' theater is that the students are reading. They are reading as they rehearse. They are reading as they perform. That connection between the eyes and the text is ongoing. We don't want them to be like looking up a lot from the page and acting things out. We want them to be continuing to have that connection between the text and their eyes. And I specifically situated this in the novice classroom because that's often where it's hard to find good fluency building materials. But I think sometimes we don't necessarily use what we have in terms of our textbooks. So you might recognize this as Urok 2.5 from Между, which is PDFs. Um, pass them out to students and assign parts with these. And it's also nice that Image-Tsunami and many other textbooks have recordings that students can access independently when they want to do extra rehearsal at home as well. So in addition to readers' theater, another way to motivate students similarly is through creating audiobooks that will end up with a recording that can be listened to by other people. The cool thing about audiobooks is students can create their own texts for those. You do want to really carefully give feedback and make sure that the written text is accurate so that they're not reading 400 times something that's not accurate. And they'll need to practice several times in class with feedback from the instructor. And I like to use this book creator where students can have their own bookshelf of audiobooks. And briefly, I'll show you what it looks like. Are you now seeing a book version of the song Vicini Tango? Okay, cool. So then we can click play here and read to me. And
Вот идет по свету человек-чудак.
so that's just an example that I made for the students. We did a project based on songs about weather and seasons. So that was just an example that I made for them. But you can see how that is something they can create for a real audience, for children, for peers, and then we can keep those around and share them going forward. Finally, the third strategy that I wanted to talk about is extensive reading. And extensive reading has been widely studied and found to improve fluency as well as vocabulary and comprehension. texts that we read extensively. That means that we're not reading them to like dissect them and figure out what the author's intention is and analyze characters' motivation. We are just reading to have fun, and the idea is that you're reading a lot of it. That's why it's called extensive reading. It's contrasted with intensive reading, which you read in class and, find the main idea and identify the key words and sentences and things like this. This is not intensive. It is extensive, just reading for fun. It should be at least 90% known words, so depending on your goal and what you're looking at, sometimes 98% is what we see. It's independent and silent. It can be done in or out of class, and we need to keep students accountable so that they do it, but we should do it in a fun way because our goal is for them to like reading. So maybe a journal or sharing with a partner. Um, I don't have a clip on there, but I use a Padlet, and I just have students write one or two sentences on Padlet about what they've read and then they also share in class just for a minute with another student. It is hard to find extensive reading materials for novice level Russian learners because where are you going to find things that are 90% familiar? Most of the Zlatoust books that say that they're A1 are, still not easy enough for our students. Paruski, the website, offers sorting by text, and I found the A1 text to be pretty good. By mid to end of first year, many students can read them. Another book that I found that works well is this kind of ridiculous book. There are some Zlatoust books that are easy enough if you're looking for hard copy, but they're not like exciting and interesting. This book is ridiculous and fun, and also easy. And I actually myself used this book as a student these many years ago. It's still floating around the internet, and goes from sort of first year type language throughout the book, getting more and more complex. So this one works pretty well too. If other people have found good extensive reading for novices, I would love to hear about it because it is tough to find. That is about all I've got for you today, which is good since I'm a minute over time. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Lara. That was really interesting. Perfect. So we're keeping the momentum going. And next up, we have Irina. Irina, would you like to introduce yourself and start with your presentation?
Sure. Thank you, Emil. And hello, everyone. It's really nice to see a lot of familiar faces from the program we've been together and the other conferences. So let me introduce myself first. My name is Irina Feofanova, and I work in Enlightium Academy, which is an online school, and I was hired to create a Russian curriculum for this school. And this is the first year Enlightium Academy is offering Russian as a world language, along French, German, and Spanish. And I'm piloting a program I've been building for a year, and it's going really nice. So today I will be talking about how I introduce alphabet in my Russian 1 course. It says learning Russian alphabet with the animal bingo, but it's a little deceiving because animal bingo is one of the things I do. And actually, we all know that there are a few different methods of letters introduction. Besides the alphabetical order that speaks for itself, right? We introduce letters in alphabetical order. We also use contrastive, that's right. I always want to pronounce this word differently from the word contrast, right? We are contrasting the English alphabet with the Russian alphabet, and we are introducing the true French letters first that look and sound very similar to English. And then after that, we're already introducing the new ones and the confusing letters. With a contrastive approach, different teachers go a little different, and I'll show you how I apply this method. But before I go and do that, I'll mention that there is a third way to introduce letters and words is the sight words. And we usually use this method for in English, right? For students who start learning English. So this method is already familiar for English learners, and they know when they don't know how to read yet, they used to learn a huge list of words they have, but they learn how to read them and how it looks, the image of the word itself, the letters, the order of the letters inside of the word. So it's actually proven that sight words method can be used in learning Russian as well. There are several researchers and linguists who used it with the phonetical languages like Russian. And another way of calling it is orthographic mapping, which is cognitive process described by reading researcher Mrs. Sandry. And she explains how readers permanently store written words in their memory. And they create this mental connection between the letters and a word, the sound that the letters represent, and the meaning of the word itself. And we probably all know how we use flashcards introducing the vocabulary. And there's a wonderful example in the online book Между нами, where Quizlet flashcards are embedded in the book itself, so the students don't have to go anywhere externally on a different website. And we do the same thing in our online school on Canvas. We just embed the flashcards for all the specific topics that we introduce. And this is one of the examples that I have here for our family vocabulary. So when students come to Russian course and they don't know letters at all, first thing I tell them, just think of these words as sight words. And a lot of these words they will repeat and use throughout the course. So the first words they get introduced to is greetings, привет, пока, здравствуйте, как дела, and family words. Those are the words that they will need to know and understand and recognize in reading, in quizzes, in communicating with each other. That's why for these words, we're mainly using sight words approach. Then the way our Russian course is built, we have a phonics section in every topic. And for that lessons, the phonics lessons, we use contrastive analysis, where we introduced letters two at a time, using contrastive analysis together with the frequency approach. So usually when teachers use introduce the true friends first, and then they kind of get lost what to introduce next. So what I do, I introduce the true friends first by two, A, O, M, T, S, K. Then I give the students the list of all the letters and where they fall. True friends, fake friends, new friends. And then every phonics lesson, they learn two. M, T, S, K. We see the contrast between the letters. N, H. And at the same time, they go with the frequency-driven approach. We make sure that we introduce the letters that are mostly common in reading first. And students look at the letters and they need to find them on the table and tell me, is it a fake friend? Is it a fake friend that looks like English but sound different? Is it a fake friend that sounds like English but look different? Or is it a new friend? And actually, most of the new friends we introduce towards the end. Usually it's the mix of the fake friends and maybe some of the new friends like which is very common in reading. And we will use it a lot to make multiples, to make plural. And of course, alphabetical order of letter introduction. Um, so why not? We already introduced the letters through sight words. We already introduced the letters through constructive approach, little by little, 2 letters at a time. And then in Unit 1 and Unit 2, I throw this project lessons, 1, 2, and 3, which is scaffolding the whole alphabet. And the plan for these lessons are they learn an alphabet song, they look at the poster, and we sing the alphabet song together. And you probably all know the Sesame Street song. A, B, V, G, D, Y, Yo, J, Z, E. They love it. And I think the whole school knows it already because we sing it very loud. I also teach in the actual classroom, and we use the same approach there as well. Then after we send together, I give them a coloring thing where they have to connect the dots, but instead of numbers, they connect the letters in alphabetical order. And here I ask them themselves to sing the same song, and while they sing every letter, they need to connect, they need to find it and connect in the right order. Sometimes we do the actual coloring. Sometimes we use the interactive game, which you can generate yourself on My Dots. You just get a picture and basically put the letters in the order there. Then after that, I introduce the letters themselves, letter, sound, animal name, and then I ask them to read out loud a small syllable list, and then they'll listen to me, to my recording doing that for practice. And one of the fun things we do then with letters, we play animal bingo, which looks like that. Everybody knows the bingo game. This is something I generated using AI. I wanted to do words that sound very similar to English. That's why there are a lot of animals they already know. Tiger, right? Crocodile, goose. And they will connect that sound to the letter that they see here in Russian alphabet. And we play animal bingo not only during the project lesson part, but in different other lessons as well. In the beginning of the lesson, we can play bingo, we can sing a song, or we can connect the letters just to practice the alphabet to make sure they remember it. I want to show the example of one of these lessons very quickly. So this is how that looks. They listen to the song, then they sing it, then we sing it together. Then they go connect the dots, or they can go and play connect the dots. They are on a separate website. Then they see the letter, sound, picture of the animal, and they try to read it out loud. If it's hard for them to do, they listen how I do the whole thing myself, and then they practice it. So I have 11 letters at a time, and then they play bingo, do a Quizlet match with the letters and the animals. And at the very end, there is a comprehension exercise where they need to show me that they actually figured out the letters and the sounds. And those are all the words that they already learned previously in the other topics of greetings and family. And this is all from what I wanted to share. And another thing I wanted to call for collaboration. My next idea for the bingo game is to create it with familiar foods. So if there is somebody who wants to do it together, it would be interesting to come up with the foods that students can recognize, like pizza, salad, tomat, broccoli, and then put it in alphabetical order and play bingo with them. This way they can play it during the food topic or during alphabet learning section. So this is something I'm planning to work on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Irina. Thank you. That was really interesting. And the food bingo, that sounds awesome. Thank you. Perfect. So up next we have Nat, I believe. So while Nat is getting set up, I'm going to introduce them. So Nat Leach holds a bachelor's degree in religion from Princeton University and a master's degree in comparative literature from Dartmouth College. They now teach Russian to middle school students at the Friends of Baltimore, preparing students for Friends' nationally renowned opera school Russian program. In the classroom, Nat works with their novice learners towards mastery of fundamental reading, speaking, and grammatical skills while ensuring that kids have fun each step of the way. Today, you will hear about their signature reading engagement tool, their warm-up slides. So Nat, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Emil, for the introduction. And as Irina said, it's so nice to see familiar faces here and to learn with you all today. Before I start, I just want to thank the At-Seal TEP program that helped me, find myself at conferences presenting like this. And Tommy Tabatowski, who gave me the idea for these warm-up slides that you're going to learn about today, as well as to my friend, mentor, and colleague at Friends School of Baltimore, Lee Roby, who encouraged me to present today. So as Emil said, I'm going to share about my warm-up slides, which I use to both engage and to work on these fundamental skills with my novice learners. So at conferences like these, I think it's always helpful to know people's teaching contexts so that you can, see how applicable it would be to you. So I'm going to go through this very quickly. That I work with middle schoolers who are learning Russian from zero. I work at a private Quaker school in Baltimore City, and one of the pros of that is that I have pretty much complete autonomy in my classroom. My students are highly motivated. However, a lot of them lack, for a lot of them, it's their first time learning a second language. And so a lot of them lack the metacognition to know what they need to do to learn the language. And as I'll share with you today, that's a big thing that I try to address with my slides. We work at a school that has a high preponderance of kids with learning differences, in particular ADHD. And I will speak to why I think my slides, effectively support those kiddos. We work at a diverse school where over 40% of the students identify as students of color. And in the slides that you'll see today, I do focus on sprinkling in diverse representations because it's very easy, low-hanging fruit to do that. And when kids see people who look like them on a screen, it really does a lot for them. What curriculum do I use? We use the Между нами textbook at Friends. And in 3 years, I cover the first 3 units, which if you know Между нами, is a snail's pace. And the warm-up slides, I feel, are a way to add a lot of vibrancy into this slow curriculum. And last but not least, I have, 3.5 contact hours with my kids and a minimum of homework, which is again another reason why I think these warm-up slides work well. And lastly, as Emil said in my introduction, I'm preparing kids for 4 years of upper school Russian where the pace is a lot quicker. And so mastery of these fundamental reading skills is something that I take seriously. And that is why I use these warm-up slides. So I start every class with a 10-minute warm-up. And I use these slides to try and, drill in these essential reading skills that the kids need. And so without telling them that you need to read accurately and that you need to have a high rate of reading and that you need to read with prosody, I try to use Russian terms that will help them know what they need to know. So on the right, all of my middle schoolers know the words произношение, ударение и интонация. So much so that the kids have made memes of me with these 3 words because they just hear it again and again and again. And as Lara shared, when kids are reading, it's good to give them a why. They know that in our warm-up slides, these are the things that we're focusing on. And then from my end, obviously the mastery of the alphabet is an essential skill that I'm trying to drill in with the 6th graders. And then as they master the alphabet, we're moving into syllable segmentation, which is an essential skill that a lot of kids of this generation have not had named as folks in reading in the teaching of reading, no, there was a while where schools shifted to whole word reading as opposed to teaching decoding explicitly. And there's unfortunate consequences for that when it comes to learning a second language with a different alphabet. And so, my kids know questions like "Сколько слогов в слове?" and "Мы читаем по слогам." And we really teach this with these slides to again help make the implicit explicit. Kids have to be able to read syllabically in order to read long Russian words. But again, this might be a skill that's not named for them. So if these are the things we're trying to do, how do we do it? And how do we do it in a way that is, not taking up all of class time? So my slides focus on naming the skills, as I named before, произношение, интонация, ударение, and then making it fun. This panel is called Reading is Fundamental, and I was so excited to be invited to it because I feel like that is my thing that I'm so proud of that I get to do in my classroom, is that kids have a truly fun warm up every day when they come into class. And with a spiraled approach, we get to keep a lot of old vocab active and also pre-teach new structures. My sixth graders don't know what adjective noun agreement is, but they know that I have to say красный галстук, but красная блузка. And they don't know why yet, but they do it. And they can use feminine adjective endings in correct places without ever having named the skill, just because we've done it probably 100 times on these slides. So I want to share examples because I think that will help you all understand what my process looks like. So I'm just going to go super quickly through what my slides look like for my sixth graders in December, when kids have been learning Russian for about 3 months. So we have a little energy check at the beginning of every class, and I'll actually show you a video of what this looks like. We read our цели на этой неделе, and then we blast through the alphabet. I have kids up on the board who are pointing to these things. I'll go quicker through the alphabet. We go through the vowels, which, as we know, is so important for reading syllabically. And so if kids know number of vowels is number of syllables in every Russian word, if they can identify vowels quickly, they'll be able to segment words into syllables more easily. And so this slide is awesome because they, if I ask the kids, "Сколько слогов в слове?" they will always be able to produce an answer quickly. Then we do the tricky combinations, which the kids think is funny because there are a lot of, letters that are either false friends or that look very similar. We go through the numbers. When we do numbers, the kids have to show the udarение with their hands, which is, again, a good engagement strategy for more hyperactive kids. And so you'll see kids karate chopping these numbers as they're reading out loud. In mid-December, we only go to 20, and then we go through these super, common words. And I'm actually going to skip the rest of these because you're going to see it in a video that I'm going to show you. And then, yes, I will show these in a video as well. We do our colors. And then I really like these slides because very early on in sixth grade, I tell the kids that intonatia is essential. Это бегемот are two different meanings, and they need to know that. And so if kids read a question, with the incorrect intonatia, I'll say, "Ребята, вопрос идет наверх или вниз?" And by me, going наверх или вниz, they know navier and vniz without, again, ever having to learn what that is, and they're able to self-correct. And so intonatia, which connects with prosody, is something that we hit super hard in the sixth grade, and it really helps them moving forward so that, when they get introduced to this idea of questions with and without question words, they're familiar with it. So I'll show you what these slides look like in my seventh grade. So this would definitely count as, more extensive reading. So when we're practicing adjective noun agreement and learning about furniture and housing, we read these slides. they know what a dachshund toilet is. And here, I try to have some cross-cultural learning happening, just looking at how different people live in different places. And my kids, again, having read these, dozens of times, they're able to read it as a group, non-robotically with nice sounding intonation, and it's really impressive. We did a whole little mini unit on, how Soviet kvartiri are decorated, and why are there kovry na stене, and they found that interesting. Again, cross-cultural representations about how different rooms look in different cultures. And these slides that I show every day, we're able to do them typically in 7 or 8 minutes. And again, the kids have learned to correct themselves. If someone thinks a slide will be bad, one of them will yell out, "Еще раз, ребята, интонация плохая," and stuff like that. Because again, we've just done this so much. And then I'll show you one more set. I hope I'm okay for time. I'll show you one more set that I use with my 8th graders. That again is more in, I would call it kind of like nonsense extensive reading, because it's just silly things that I've invented. So drilling verb conjugations is something that with the 8th graders we're doing every day. And again, these are things where I have them, again, karate chop the udarение so that they get it drilled in. As we know from, cognitive science around learning, when we map certain aspects of words onto physical gestures, it's retained a lot better. This is something that I learned from my teacher, Lee Roby, when I was her student, and it stuck with me, and it's sticking with my kids. And so we drill verb conjugations, and then we have these very nonsense slides that are goofy. Here I'm highlighting the accusative case, just so kids are aware that there is grammar at play here. Again, these are things that kids read chorally. Try to keep them funny. Charlie XCX is a pop musician that my kids really like, so I added that in there. This is a meme that the 8th graders know. So again, it's a little bit nonsensical, but it's getting the kids laughing, and it gives them a chance to practice these fundamental reading skills. So I will show you a video of my 6th graders, 3 months.
I'm afraid time's up.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry about that. So is it a short video?
Yeah, I can show you. Yeah, this is like a 20-second video. Is it okay?
Let's just do one video then. And then maybe when we have questions and if people want to watch more, we can see more videos. Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, yeah, no problem. That's my fault.
We actually can't hear because when you show a video, you need to optimize for sound. So maybe you can show it later at the end. So
Okay.
just before you show the slideshow, you have to optimize for sound if anyone's showing any more videos.
Okay. Got it.
Perfect.
My apologies.
You can share a link.
Yes. So I will share a link for all of my slides in the chat, and yes.
Awesome.
Thank you all for
Thank you so
listening.
much, Pat. Yeah, awesome. And again, when we have our Q&A session, we may go back to those like slides, videos, right? So everyone will get a chance to ask questions. But thank you so much, Ned, for your presentation. And up next, we have Anna Karpusheva. Right, Anna, I'm pronouncing the last name correctly, right? Not Karpusheva, right?
That's
Perfect.
correct.
Just want to make sure. Awesome. So as Anna is setting up, and I think we can see something on the screen now, I'm going to introduce Anna. So Anna is a teaching assistant professor of Russian at the University of Pittsburgh. Her work focuses on instructed second language acquisition with additional interests in Slavic folklore, 19th century romantic prose, and Soviet and post-Soviet literature and film. Her research explores representations of Soviet ideological heritage and trauma in late and post-Soviet Russophone literature, especially in the works of Svetlana Alexievich. So welcome to Anna, and Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Emil. Welcome, everyone. Hello, everyone. I'm very grateful to be here, very glad to be here. So my presentation today, I called it From Hogwarts Magic to Reading Master, Reading Strategies in Beginning Level Russian. And it came from kind of an obstacle that I encountered when I taught just the very beginning of the first year when it's just the first 2 weeks when we introduce vocabulary, when we start reading, and the exercises, reading exercises come down to just reading a list of words, which are sometimes cognates, sometimes Russian native words, glossed or not glossed, and very simple dialogues. Кто это? Что это? Это диван, это учитель, and so on and so forth. And the communications is not authentic, the texts are not authentic, and students start to develop inferiority complex, feeling like they're little kids. So to address this issue, I started thinking, how can we help it, and how can I create reading sequence, guided reading sequence, so they feel engaged, it is relevant, it is meaningful for them, but also a bit challenging, but not too challenging. And I came up with this sequence that is based on cultural cognates more than anything. And by cultural cognates, I mean cultural products of Western culture that are known in the world globally. So, so this guided reading sequence is based on Harry Potter, and I start with showing my students this poster, and I ask «Кто это?» and then «Что это?» For the question «Кто это?» they start reading, and it's Harry Potter, and then we read Uznik Azkabana. They don't know the word Uznik, but they can read it now, and they can figure it out because they all know this book or they watched the film. And so when I ask «Что это?», usually I teach this sequence. If it's not intensive, an intensive course, then it's probably the second week. If if it is intensive Russian, it's the first week of instruction. And so when I ask «Что это?», they usually say «Film». Well, it might be film in English, but in Russian, it's not too far from film. So film, I also introduced книга, сериал, серия, and I supply a little picture to the word book, so it's clear. And I have this, and DVD disc. We also have these. Okay, and then we move on, and now it is the task, the major task here is to determine the favorite book or the favorite episode of the series. And students are given the names of the books and films, episodes, and they are invited to restore the sequence, so put them in chronological order. And so they are offered to fill out this table. So, and we read through первая книга, вторая книга, and they can understand that this is the order, and first, second, third, and so on, book or episode. And then they're supposed to check mark their favorite book or film. And I ask a student, какая ваша любимая книга или серия фильма? And they answer, and then they engage in similar dialogues with each other in pairs, and then we decide which book is the leader, is the most favorite in our class altogether. Then we move on to these three photos or pictures, and again, there they see первая фотография, вторая фотография, третья фотография. They recognize it from the first set of exercises, and they have this phrase «Школа чародейства и волшебства Хогвартс». They can recognize школа, they can recognize Hogwarts. What is чародейство and волшебства? They can restore that phrase in English, and they get to the right answer, witchcraft and wizardry. And they are supposed to determine which photograph this phrase describes. And they usually arrive to the answer pretty successfully. The next one, we talk a little bit, two words, преподаватель, three words, ученик, преподаватель / учитель. And I just point at the picture, for example, D, and это преподаватель, это учитель, а это ученик, это ученик. And so then students are asked to match characters. They're supposed to read their names and match them with pictures. And after that, we try to determine who is the teacher and who is the student here. They have a little challenge over here. Lord Voldemort does not necessarily fall into any of the categories, and that's a good moment to say, не преподаватель, не учитель, не ученик, демон. Something like that. And they work with 11 characters from the book. And then we categorize them into плохой герой и хороший герой. But at the students level, I dislike these words because плохой, хороший are kids' words. So we learn more advanced words, отрицательный, положительный, and they again are dealing with bigger words, scarier words, but they can handle them because they understand what's going on. They put characters into categories, and then we answer these questions all together. Then we move on to schools, the 4 schools in Hogwarts, and students need to match schools with the scarves and colors. And while it's easy to figure out школа Gryffindor, школа Slytherin, школа Puffendуй, and Когтевран are a little bit more challenging, but again, Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw, again, the sounding gives them enough clues, so they are successfully accomplish this task. And then we try to determine which student. We bring the students and the schools together, and we try to determine who studies where. And I ask them a question, кто учится в школе Гриффиндор. We figure out by again guessing what учится is, if that it hasn't been introduced yet in just a regular course. Or the instruction before. And I also point out at the change in the ending of школа, and it's their very quick, brief introduction to prepositional case. So location, when you talk about where at, usually the ending changes into yeah, the default ending is yeah. And so they determine say which students studies where. And then we come to English-Russian comparison. I know some teachers avoid using English whatsoever, but I think it is crucial, and I still use it in my classroom. They need to rely on their mother tongue, and they need to sometimes see them side by side, those words. And these are the классы, предметы в Хогвартсе. And so they try to figure out what is what. Some of them are cognates proper. It's a little bit harder with древние руны and магловедение, but they can still figure it out. And we can have a little moment, a discussion of that Maglavedenie becomes one word, and Russian is synthetic language, right? So, but again, very brief. And then we determine the самый интересный класс. They can figure out what самый means. And then we have a short kind of cultural moment out of all this reading activities is talking about the names of students and teachers in the US and Russia. So in the US, in schools and universities, the word student is used in both basically places. Teacher is more common for schools, учитель, and for university, it's professor or instructor. So, and then I give them these words, and also we figure out that ученик, ученица, школьник, школьница, that's feminine forms of the word student, and also преподаватель, преподавательница, учитель, учительница. We see that they have feminine forms, but then professor and instructor don't. And we have a short conversation that ka might be added these days because there is a tendency to bring feminine forms to all professions in Russian, but it's still taking place. So I invite them to just brainstorm together and divide this words into the categories, and then we discuss them all together, and I show them that how the distribution works in Russian, and the word instructor is never used in школа or university, and then преподаватель can be used in both, but is more common for university level.
Anna, I'm afraid time's up. Sorry about
Time is up. Okay, so then we have a brief game. And then just quickly, I won't show you the video then, but we have a short video of Harry Potter in the Soviet Union, and it sparks the conversation about Soviet Union, the pioneer and pionierka movement, and they can choose what they think. They read through the sentences, utterances, sentences, yes, and choose what they think a pioneer and pionierka might mean, what is correct and what is not. So, and so the benefits of this sequence is it is challenging. It's challenging to read all those long words. But it's still comprehensible input. They have a lot of fun. It's meaningful material for them, but it still trains all the reading strategies, but it also sparks meaningful speaking, grammar conversations, and definitely builds cultural competence. And other cultural products that can be used for same kind of sequences could be Star Wars, The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and Marvel superheroes. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Awesome, Anna. I'm sorry I had to cut you, but that was
That's
amazing.
problem.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. And last but not least, we have Serafima Gettys. Serafima, while you're getting set up, I'm going to introduce you. So Dr. Serafima Gettys is chair and associate professor at the Department of World Languages at Lewis University in Illinois. And we are very glad that you're here. So I'm glad that everyone is here. And so yeah, thank you. So Serafima, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will try my best to be as brief as possible, but at the same time, I'm glad I'm the last one. Maybe I'll have a lot additional minutes. Okay, so the idea is very simple. It's a first semester reader in Russian for university college students. Now, the project itself produced the reader and relies on three major theoretical premises, three pillars. The first one is usage-based theory of language and the role of L1 from the perspective of this theory. The second pillar is methodological approach of interlinear translation. And the third is the technique used in literacy education, in English known as assisted repeated reading technique. So if you're not familiar with usage-based theory of education, it is relatively new, but it's an umbrella label for a variety of approaches to second language acquisition that share these two main assumptions. Linguistic input learners receive is primary source of second language learning, and cognitive mechanisms that learners employ are not exclusive for language learning, but belong to general cognition. Another important idea that comes from usage-based theory is that language is basically learning a language is basically learning of constructions. And constructions are form-function mappings that are used to express certain meanings in a certain speech community. Constructions can be morphemes, small pairings of form and meaning, from words to phrases, and so on. The main law of acquisition in usage-based theory is frequency of use. So the more frequently a construction is used, the more it is experienced, the earlier it is acquired. A very special role is played by L1. L1 is seen as provide. You will understand why I'm doing it just in a few minutes. L1 is seen as providing cognitive starting point and framework of linguistic knowledge for the processes associated with learning L2. The theory claims that learners always begin with constructions of their native language, and they transfer them into L1 constructions. And they both facilitate and clash with each other, resulting both in positive and negative transfer. In short, the process of learning of second language is seen as simply substitution, replacement of L1 constructions by their L2 counterparts. And even the way the language is learned, what learners pay attention to, what they attend to, what they notice, is also predetermined and shaped by L1, by psychology of the first language. And these L1 and L2 constructions find themselves in a state of severe sharp competition, since L2 constructions are very deeply entrenched in the mind of the learner. Now, the second pillar of this project was interlinear translation. I'm sure you're familiar with the term. Interlinear translation is, in interlinear translation, the original text is presented alongside line-by-line translation into another language. And the format allows readers to see the direct, or rather word-for-word correspondence between L1 and the target language constructions. So the format, the original text, usually is printed above its English equivalent. So you are probably familiar with this format. This is what it looks like. So interlinear translations, obviously, make meaning of the original text more accessible. They also allow learners for a detailed, nuanced comparison between L1 construction and its counterpart, revealing the smallest nuances and differences. There are certainly limitations, because word-for-word translation may be, well, let's put it this way, kind of clumsy and ugly, and it can be overly literal. And as a matter of fact, it may sometimes even distort the full meaning and cultural nuances of the original text. And sometimes they're even hard to remember, to translate. The third pillar of the approach is what I call a deceptively simple yet powerful technique. I use the word deceptively because the method is, although very simple, does work. So what does it come to? First, the student reads the passage, listens to the passage read by the instructor. Then they read the passage several times. It goes through multiple readings of a short, meaningful passage several times until a satisfactory fluency is reached. The method is somewhat similar to athletes training. As you know, athletes practice for considerable time is spent on practicing basic, simple skills before they develop speed and smoothness of the performance. What is underlying is that gradually, as students read the text many times, less attention is required for decoding and more attention is available for comprehension. Thus, rereading creates both fluency and enhances comprehension. There are three stages. First, as the student begins to read the text, he does it with great difficulty. It's hard to recognize the words. The process is really painfully slow. The next level is accuracy level. The student is able to recognize printed words with considerable accuracy, but it still takes a lot of attention. When you listen to the student's reading, you see that you can hear that his reading is rather slow, halting, with stumbling, without, and most importantly, no emotion, without expression. And at the third and most advanced level is what we call automatic reading, automatic stage. The student is recognizing printed words without attention to decoding and can read the text with expression. So, but can you really, isn't it really tedious to make the learner read one and the same text several times? Well, maybe. But a better approach is to provide tasks that result in multiple rereading. So the first time the text is read, it's read with interlinear translation, with English translation, word-for-word translation, below every line. After that, for example, there may be an assignment to respond to questions by reading a sentence from the text that contains the answer question. This is second reading. The third reading is agree or disagree with the following statements by reading the relevant sentences from the text. The fourth can be proved by reading a sentence from the texts that, and that usually checks implied information. And finally, reread the text while inserting the subject, or connect the beginning of the sentence with its end, or read the sentence, the text, while selecting the last word of the sentence that is provided in parentheses. So at least even here, we can see that the text, certainly the assignments vary, but at least 7 different activities prompt 7 rereadings. I wanted to show you the example of this. Here is the first page of the reader. It's actually Anna, poor Anna, TPRS publishers. And as you can see, every sentence has an interlinear, every line has an interlinear translation, word-for-word translation. The next assignment is answer each of the following questions, read it from the text. That's second reading. Then the students turn the page, they don't see the English text anymore, and they are asked to read the passage again. Then they are asked to agree or disagree with the following statements by reading the whole sentence from the text above. Next assignment, prove by reading the relevant sentence from the text. Another good drill is find Russian for in the text. And the whole cycle is completed by complete sentences in the left column with the words in the right column. This is one and the same text, but sentences are divided into two different parts, beginning and end, and students have to connect them. That's it. The whole procedure takes about 10 minutes of every class. Every class, students read probably maybe a little longer passages as they get used to this book, but that happens on a regular basis. Every day, every meeting, every session. And what can I say?
Oh, Serafima, I'm afraid the time is up. Sorry about that.
That's it. I'm done.
Okay, perfect. Okay, just want to make sure we have time for questions. But that was really interesting. Sorry about that. Perfect. Well, awesome. So we just went through all of the presentations. So I would like everyone to give a round of applause to all of our presenters, because that was amazing. So many different things to learn and borrow and adapt. And I think there's already a lot of collaboration happening in the chat. So what we're going to do now, we're going to open it up for questions. So I think we have about 15 minutes for questions. I think the next event is at 4:30. So if you want to hang out after that, though, like after 4:20, that's totally fine. But yeah, Shen, please go ahead.
Thank you. I have a question. I thought of it first when Lara was speaking, but then I think maybe others would have an opinion, especially Serafima probably too. I've been paying attention to how some teachers are using AI with reading, and one of the things that that has been suggested, I haven't used this myself, but is to take like a maybe more difficult or more detailed text, have AI simplify it, and then have that as part of the repeated reading. And I wondered, when we're talking about repeating reading, does it have to be the exact same text, or could it be slightly different text that got more complicated or added more details or something like that? So I was just wondering what you thought of that.
Okay. May I be the first to answer? The extensive reading is a very desirable element of foreign language education. Nobody will argue that extensive reading is absolutely indispensable from learning a language. But is it realistic? Do students have enough time to read extensively? I doubt. Especially in today's world where foreign languages, our hours are reduced, and departments of foreign languages are shut down, and the faculty are let go, okay? So repeated reading of the same text, this is one of the staples of the approach. Repeated reading in itself is a makes up for the amount of reading, kind of. So it's a kind of a compensation for extensive reading. So that's one of the main ideas that lies in the foundation of assisted repeated reading. This is my response. But
I would say, Shannon, in terms of developing fluency, you really want to have them reading the same exact text multiple times. I think there's probably other benefits to reading increasingly difficult versions of the text, but for fluency, they're getting better at phrasing the same sentences, at recognizing the same symbols, so they really need to have the same sentence multiple times, the same text multiple times to do that. Serafima, would you agree with that?
Say it again. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, the same sentence.
Yeah. And I could also add to that even at the very beginning, the reading, the fluency is more important than accuracy.
Mhm.
So it's often achieved at the expense of accuracy. So this is what you said at the very beginning in your presentation. The students need to read with a certain speed in order to benefit from reading. Otherwise, it's not beneficial. It's just spending the idle. Yeah, it's just nothing. Yeah. The vocabulary gain comes through repetition, definitely. Words are learned in their textual form first. And what I can also share with you that I've been learning Spanish on my own, and I no teacher, no textbook, but interlinear translation, and that's how I learn it, both grammar and vocabulary, nothing else.
In terms of the AI thing, Nat and I were actually having a side conversation about doing that. I have played with it a little bit. I just think I need more concentrated time to figure out what the prompts are to elicit the kinds of texts that that I'm looking for. But yeah, I think it could be the answer to this question.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. Nat, do you want to say something to that?
Can I speak to the question as well and about AI? I
Sure.
find that when you feed AI, that if you write a sample that you like, that you feel like would be appropriate for your kids, and feed that in addition to prompts, I find that it's a lot more effective, because it kind of teaches the AI like this is what they can't, like this is what they know, and this is it won't add structures that you haven't included in that original text. Especially if you say that, don't use any other cases besides these. And so anyway, I completely agree with Lara about the prompting, and I found that it helps to feed an example in addition to the prompts, because I think you'll get closer to what you want.
Irina, do you have a new question, or did you want to add to
I
that?
have a comment question to the repeated reading. I completely agree with both Lara and Serafima on how important it is, and we do it as well in our novice classroom. And what we do that kids love is kind of the theater when they have to change their emotional state, the way they read. When I would say, now read angrily, or now read whispering, and now read loudly, and now imagine you're wondering or surprised, and now think you're bored. And this is the way they can learn some of these expressions in Russian, and at the same time they have a lot of fun acting out those expressions. So I'm wondering if anybody else is doing that in the classroom as well, and see the reaction of the students. Do they find it fun? Do they find it helpful? Because what I noticed, we started doing it with tongue twisters. But then I thought I should do the same thing with any kind of dialogue, any kind of text, that little paragraphs, that what would we do? And they find it hilarious, and they love doing it. That chore feeling of repeating the same text over and over again kind of disappears, and they feel excited about doing it.
Yeah, it's amazing that they do. One that may wonder why, but they do enjoy doing it. I also ask them sometimes to speak, to read with interrogative intonation. They're like asking questions all the time. So anyway, it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
And while I'm not muted, I have another quick question. I noticed that a lot of K to 12 students are using a lot of visual materials. And it corresponds to the idea that students nowadays are different. They're more visual learners, and they respond better to pictures and images, and changing images and colors and brightness. I wonder, if we have universities, teachers here, professors here as well. I wonder if it changes in university level, or you are readjusting your methodology as well? Do you also try to introduce more images, this bright colors, just what we do with in K-12 classrooms, or you think that they're older now, they're mature, they're ready to read letters and words instead of looking at the pictures?
So, Lara, you're a university faculty, right?
Yeah, I'm at university faculty, but I've also taught K-12. So I absolutely use all those things, but I have no idea whether it's because of my students' needs or just because of who I am as a teacher and what is authentic to me. So I'd be interested to hear from other people who feel like they may have had to make an adjustment in that direction.
As to me, well, we, in my department, we're not using textbooks at all. And all those volumes of supplementary materials that come with them and that are full of those pictures, well, they can be even a distraction. I feel that they can even be distractive. You know, after all, it is the language that should be the focus of attention. So, at the same time, having said that, I certainly use pictures with vocabulary, absolutely. This is, you know, a given, definitely. But I would say that all those volumes of textbooks and supplementary materials that are so costly for students basically do very little for proficiency. And we create our own courses, and they are based on OPI, oral proficiency interview. The topics are based on what the OPI is about. And we prepare them for the exam, basically. So the choice of vocabulary is very, you know, very strict. We do not introduce words that are not used very often. So only very frequent vocabulary. No time.
Anna,
Simply no time.
you teach at the University of Pittsburgh, right? I wonder what's your perspective?
I definitely use pictures, but as long as they're relevant in some way. Sometimes pictures are relevant just to start the conversation or prep them for the readings. Like collect some words that they know about this topic by just showing the picture. But I am not definitely in favor of providing illustration for every single piece that they read. That's not necessary at all. But semanticization of vocabulary is to avoid English, by all means, bring more pictures. But if it's just, I don't know, for the sake of pictures, probably no. No, I don't use that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions from the audience?
I have a question. Lara, when you said that it's important to repeat same text over and over, I think I missed it. What were your recommendations on how to do it so students are not bored, per se? And my other question was, how do all of you make sure that you engage each student? Because your classroom time is the only time when they can practice and you can listen to them and give them feedback. I struggle keeping everyone engaged. What is your approach on making sure they're actually reading aloud?
Right. So my main task is to scare them. No, they have a motivation via the end product, which is something where they will be seen and heard by other people. So in the case of Readers Theater, they'll be performing at least for their class. And in the case of the audiobooks, they'll be creating books that will be heard at least by their class. Ideally, it's better to have a wider audience. But then it's very motivating to do things accurately, and they really want to do things accurately. The Readers Theater is nice because you can put them in groups and go around and listen from group to group in terms of managing the feedback in class. It's hard if you've got each student independently reading something that takes 2 minutes to read. You can't necessarily sit by each individual student and listen to them for the entire 2 minutes. So you can spot listen to people. And I have few enough students that I can also handle students doing audio recordings for homework and then giving them feedback on the audio recordings for homework. I know we have colleagues in the K-12 world who have, upwards of 100 students. That might not work so well. But I find that it works fine for me for a class of 20 or so.
I also found a paradox of our times is that assigning reading for home assignment is absolutely hopeless. For one thing, well, they're not used to reading. Secondly, there are so many students with deficient reading in general, just as a disability. And secondly, different students read it with very different degree of precision, so to say. So they come to you after this home assignment with completely different levels of reading. But the simplest phenomenon is they just don't read. They simply don't. So that's why I believe that it is very important that reading is a part of the class work. And then go home and do something else, voice thread, whatever, right? But reading is not for home assignment. It should be done with instruct. That's
when I'm talking about reading for home assignment, I'm talking about doing recording yourself reading aloud, which is something that they do because they have to turn it in.
Only this voice thread, definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
When you make them read it, that's effective. But when you just say read and understand, the notion of comprehension is so different for different kids. It's just there. Do you want to say something? Do you want a word-for-word translation or literal translation? Some believe that there are two kinds of translations, so it's hopeless with today's kids because, again, the age of technology.
What about others? How do you engage? How do you make sure they're engaged? Yeah, Nat, go ahead.
So as I said, I work with middle school students, and I suspect most of you do not. But I have a system of klasные баллы in my classroom, and every time before we do the slides, I tell them, если энергия высокая, если вы читаете вместе, я вам дам 2 балла. And after we read, I'll ask them, ребята, мы вместе прочитали? And some of them go, вместе or нет, не вместе. And I'll say, энергия высокая была, and so this again is a way to give them passive exposure to things. But I have the kids then come up and give us, so I have a классный капитан, and the классный капитан is the one who has the final say of whether we actually earned the баллы or not. And when they have 20 баллов, I give them печенье. And so bribery is not good for so many reasons. And for something this mundane, say, I think it works really well because, 6th graders are like puppies. And if you tell them you're getting points just for being loud and enthusiastic, like it's pretty cool what they'll bring to the table. But I recognize the limitations of my context and that, giving points for good reading is probably something that would make, college students roll their eyes, or maybe not. I don't know.
Irina, what about you? Because you teach in like face-to-face and online. So like, how do you do it online?
Yeah, with online, I don't really have, any control of what students are doing on their own. During the live sessions, it's just calling on someone and, it can be out of order and you can't see what everybody's doing while they're muted. So with online teaching, it's impossible to control. In the actual classroom, I left when Lara said that she keeps them in fear. And yes, that's what we do. I don't know what's worse, fear or bribery. So we use both. And I just make sure that they know that I can I can call on anyone at any point, even in the middle of somebody else presenting. And that embarrassment that you were daydreaming or talking to someone else and have no idea where everybody is reading and with what intonation. This stress that they're going through when they're called on, when they're not prepared, I think it's the fear they have, which works very well sometimes with some students. With some students, it doesn't work at all. They think it's very funny. And you will have different students in the classroom. So, yeah, just when you try to make it fun and engaging, everybody's present. When it's boring for them, you kind of have a feeling that it is, and you switch the activity very quickly. And we try not to keep the same activity more than 10-15 minutes because all of them have a lower attention span nowadays. It doesn't matter if it's a kindergarten or high school student, the attention span is pretty limited nowadays. And I know veteran teachers can see the difference. And as new teachers, we just, we get what we get. And we are trying to work with what we have and trying to be more engaging. And yes, we do have illustration for every little dialogue and every little paragraph that we read. And this is something that AI is helping with as well. I would feed a paragraph or a dialogue to an AI and ask it to generate an illustration for it. That's why it's a tool that gives us visual presentation more easily. And yes, sometimes it is a distraction, but that kind of positive emotion with laughter, seeing a third leg or a puppy without the tail or something like that, it gives the emotional connection to the students to what they're reading about. And I feel like it helps their memory with that as well. So I think there are pros and cons with using a distraction during the lesson as well.
Great. And Anna, do you have anything to add to the question?
I actually had some thoughts about this. Well, first of all, how I try to keep my students engaged. Recently, I have been teaching like higher levels of Russian, so third and fourth year. And what I found effective is we are so much into technology now, and sometimes we like overload students with, oh, use this technology, record yourself here, post here, create a book over here, or something like that. This year, I limited the technology use to just very simple camera use. And even for their presentations this year, first of all the prepared speech was online, meaning that they had to just have their phone and record themselves when they were speaking. But I'm talking about speaking, not reading necessarily. And then in class, we had Q&A sessions on their presentations. All of them were supposed to watch their videos. And so the mode is, I do not ask them to prepare PowerPoints and create videos with these PowerPoints because that's what I did last year. Now it's just like the format of Instagram. And they actually really appreciated that because they came to speak, to write, to read, and not necessarily use technology. And they're tired of it as well these days. And yeah, that's actually comes together with the use of pictures. My PowerPoints have pictures. I hate when it's just text. That's too overwhelming. But I do not ask my students to, look for the illustrations of what you're saying. No, it's not necessary.
I think they're kicking us out. Well, I'm sorry, everyone, but
Oh no, I really wanted to ask about how you differentiate your instructions and if anyone is using flip method.
Yeah, we're leaving like in 40 seconds, but let's
Okay. We can speak for another hour.
So let's thank Irina, Nat, Lara, Serafima, Anna, everyone for their participation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.